Hello and welcome to my channel. In my video today, I'm making 2 pie cards in honor of Pie Day, and I'm using the Sweet as Pie bundle that includes stamps and dies from Concord and Ninth to create my cards. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out my pie pieces. I'm also going to cut out some strips to create some interesting background. And then what I really like to do when I make little die cut pies is ink blend on them. So I'll usually select, 1 or 2 shades of brown to sort of give the crust pieces, make them really look like they've been baked and, put through the oven. And then for the pies themselves, I'll add a little bit of shading and dimension around the edges to again make it look like it was really baked. And I think our first one is a little bit purple, so I think that will be a blueberry pie. And then the second one is red, so that one I think will be a cherry pie. And when I'm done ink blending, I'll go ahead and assemble them off camera. For my sentiment, I'm going to be using something, one of the stamp sentiments, and I'm going to be stamping that and heat embossing it in white embossing powder. And the sentiment says sweet as pie, so sort of maybe like a whipped cream topping on that pie piece there. Now I'll start assembling my card. I had originally stamped this sort of plaid background, and then I ultimately changed my mind, so now I'm adding this pattern paper that also kind of looks like a plaid. And then I'm going to be adding these strips of different colors of cardstock. I believe it's honeysuckle, ballet slipper, and grapefruit for the stripes. And then my pies are out of plumberry, poppy, and wheat for the pies themselves. So I'm adding these strips in the background, gluing them down. Then I'm going to be adding this top panel. It's on some foam tape, so give it a little bit of dimension. And then I'll be adding foam tape on the back of my pies and placing those sort of onto that sort of plaid background piece. And that's the end of my first card. Pretty simple, really easy to make, didn't take long at all. So I decided to make a second one, because why not? You can always make more pie cards. You can never have too many. The color palette I am using for this set of pies is Buttercup, Spiced Cider, and Wheat for the pies. I also have white there for the little like whipped cream dollop that's got some light brown shading. And I am using cayenne to give some darker color for our orange pie here. And then I'm also going to be using Harbor and Midnight for some of our sentiments. And these coordinate with a plaid background pattern paper that I'm going to be using. And much like my last cards, I'm adding the shading to make it really look like they were baked. I even added a little bit of light brown detail to that little whipped cream fluff. Like they have that kitchen tool that so you can sort of like heat up and brown, things in the kitchen, just to really make it look like it's, a really cooked pie. So I've added my ink blending, and now I am assembling my tiny little pies here. And so this is kind of the layout of the card. I'm going to be using the sentiment Happy Pie Day in honor of Pie Day. And in this set, there are 2 dies that sort of form the plates or trays that the pies can sit on. And I'm going to be using them to create a little window on my panel there. And then I'll have this plaid background that I mentioned behind the pies themselves. Just to make sure they lay nicely next to each other, I'm just trimming off the excess on both of these pieces, so you can't see it on the outside of the card, and they also don't look really wonky by overlaying themselves on the inside. To glue these down nicely, I'm adding a little bit of temporary adhesive to the edge of each of these pieces of paper and lining them up in the back where I want them to go. I'm then going to flip this panel over and add liquid adhesive just underneath those patterned paper pieces. And then I'll flip it back over and line it up with my card base right where I want those windows to go. And then I'm going to push the pattern paper through the window to adhere it to the card base. I'm then going to add foam adhesive to the back of the card panel so it's a little popped up, and place that on my card base. I'm also adding foam adhesive to the back of these little pies and placing them into the sort of plate window openings. For the sentiment, I have Happy Pie Day, and this little die cuts out a little rectangle with the little letters cut out of them, so I'm going to inlay the happy letters and day letters inside the cutouts using the two different colors that I cut out of this sentiment. And that is my finished card, my second one. The background plaid is a little subtle. And here are the two cards that I made for Pi Day. In my first card, it can be for Pi Day or another event, because this has a really simple sentiment, you're as sweet as pie. And the second one is definitely to celebrate Pi Day. So I hope you like these cards, and thanks for watching. Have a happy Pie Day and go eat some pie.